Today, let's talk about what I have observed to be lies that we as humans often believe but can keep us stuck. And in case we have not met yet, hello, my name is Allison. I own musicwork.com, and we help talented musicians get connected with high-end performances. But the reason why I want to talk about this broad topic here is honestly just because it's on my heart. And by working with a lot of people, both clients and also within our communities, I've come to realize that so much of our outcome is determined by the programming or the beliefs that we have. So it's top of mind. I thought I would riff off of this idea to give you my current take of things that I don't think help us get to our full potential, that are often embedded into our thinking. Would be very curious to hear your thought. This is just my opinion. So with that said, let's dig into it. Okay, now starting us off with belief number 5, and that is the lie that no one understands you. Now I'm telling you, this one is so rude because it actively attacks those who are often in the most pain. Now, I'm not sure if it's 100% true for everyone, but it's certainly been true for me that when I'm in a season of the most amount of pain, this is when I feel like no one will understand me. That's when I isolate the most, and it's when I push people away the most, and it just causes me to live a facade lifestyle where I'm constantly pretending. Meanwhile, there is a storm raging on the inside with no light coming in. So the reality is when you're in a season of trial, that is when you actually need community the most. It's when you need to see how others have solved a similar problem, or even have them just speak something encouraging to you. And that is actually the key to unlocking progress. So some of you who know my work know that I'm passionate about the power of community, and I love building communities to help people get unstuck, and really do believe there's power in encouragement. But you may be surprised that most of my life, and arguably still in some areas, I live the exact opposite way. I have lived a lot of my life actively pushing people away just to live that facade. And I realized that, well, I'll tell you what the unlock was. It took me encountering a problem that was big enough that I didn't have any pride over, that I finally broke through the facade and the pride that I had in order to accept help and to look for community. And that was with growing my music business. And because I had no pride around that, and was happy to admit that I needed help, finally broke me out of that mindset. But I'm seeing in so many other areas, like wherever you have pride that you can't accept help and you can't accept community, these are the areas that I have experienced that are challenging to overcome. So that's my 2 cents there based off my experience. Hope that helps. Now moving on to belief number 4, and this is the lie that we do not have enough. Now, I'm not saying that there's no time ever in history where someone did not have what they legitimately needed, but I am saying that I feel in definitely myself, and perhaps in others, you can tell me if it's true, that often when we're saying things to ourselves like, I can't afford that, or I don't have time for that, is a big one for me, is often what we're saying to ourselves is actually not true. And maybe consider that sometimes you're lying to yourself in those circumstances. And closer to the truth is, I'm choosing not to prioritize that right now, or I don't think this will get me XYZ benefit. And I think using that language is helpful. I'm not saying there isn't any circumstances where you legitimately can't do something because of circumstances, but I'm saying so much of when we say we can't do something because we don't have enough, often I feel like that is not quite the actual case. Now, I don't want to upset people right now, but if I do, so be it. But growing up as a millennial in the school system, I can sympathize with those who have been a little bit indoctrinated in the belief system that the world doesn't have enough and we are kind of encouraged to be small, like save, save, save. And don't get me wrong, I absolutely think it's so important to take care of not only yourself and other people, but in the environment. But I believe it can all be synergistic, and that mindset of shrinking yourself in order to help, I don't think helps. I think the actual mindset of expanding yourself in order to solve problems and to look at things accurately is actually what's going to help in every area. Is any of this making sense? You can let me know. But yeah, I believe that scarcity is a lie. I believe that we have all that we need, and that it takes the right thinking in order to access it. So let me know what you think about that one in the comments. Okay, now moving on to belief number 3, and this is the lie that you are your work. Now, the reason that I'm calling this one out as a lie is because it's so fragile. So especially if you're someone who has had a lot of feedback about something, maybe from a young age, you were told you're really talented in this one area, or really good at this, or whatever it is, often we can build these identities around things that we do and get so much satisfaction around that. And it's not inherently bad by itself, but the question is, what happens when that is taken away from outside circumstances? And if your answer is well, then I am nothing, then I would question whether or not that belief is true, because I believe that you are something even without that thing that you do, that you are intrinsically valuable, in fact. So this has been a challenging one for me, because I've always identified as someone who is I wanted to be talented. I wanted to be hardworking. I wanted to like make an income. And, you know, it's funny, the situation that I walked into when, for those of you who know my story, there was a season of my life where I lost like a business that I built, and, you know, I was a performing violinist. I didn't lose it, but, you know, I wasn't allowed to work in it because I moved to a different country, and, you know, was essentially starting from zero with a completely different set of obstacles. And this was a situation that really caused me to question my identity, and I realized how much I relied on the identity I had of being someone who was good at things that I did, because now I was in a situation where I had to do other types of work where there's new challenges. And, you know, I think that as someone who believes in God, God allowed me to walk through that in order to question those identities I had built up in myself to realize the identity that perhaps I actually had. So anyways, enough of a tangent there. If you believe that you are your work, or that all your value is in what you do, this might drive you to create a lot and do a lot of wonderful things, and that's wonderful, but it may also be a fragile belief system. So I would encourage you to be encouraged that you are intrinsically valuable, that when someone says no to you, if you're running a business and, you know, they don't like what you made, doesn't mean that you're not valuable. It just means that the thing isn't valuable. And being able to separate ourselves from the thing we do is so important, because especially, when it comes to sales, that's a big one, because when we're in this state where like we're always putting our heart on our sleeves, like building a business or making music, and we get feedback that's not for everyone, you need to understand that doesn't mean that, you know, you aren't valuable. It's just someone might be talking about a thing that you do, and being able to separate ourselves from that is extremely useful. So that enough on that one right there. Let's move on to the next. Okay, now moving on to belief number 2, and this one we'll call the illusion of self-reliance. Now, I was so hesitant to include this one in the list because self-reliance is so useful, okay? So there's kind of this spectrum that I'll explain, and you can tell me if it makes sense to you. But essentially, I believe that it's very useful to get into the camp of self-reliance, but there is actually a clearer, more accurate view just outside of that. But let's go through the spectrum, because we kind of start in this place, or at least I did, and this is very common and no judgment, but I'm telling you, I lived most of my life here of believing that life happens to us, that all we can do, the best we can do is react and just do our best to just go through the motions. We don't really have the power to influence anything. And I believe this is definitely like the furthest thing from the truth, that you absolutely have things within your control that you can influence. And that brings us into the self-reliance category, where it's like, okay, that went wrong. I'm going to take responsibility for that, because that way I know that I can change it in the future. Oh, that person's doing that thing, I can do that too. I'm just going to reverse engineer and figure it out, okay? So self-reliance is great because we can make a lot of progress when we're believing that we have so much in our control that we can make anything happen. And you just like write it out in your vision board or wherever it is, and you can make it happen, all that stuff, okay? That's cool, but that's like very limiting, okay? Because what I've found to be true is that the best I can do is not what I want. Me taking everything into control is not what I want. What happens to me, and you can tell me if this is true to you, is I'll work extremely hard just relying on self-reliance, and I'll get some results, but like way less than I put into it. So I don't know why that's my default. Like it's always been the same for me. I'll work extremely hard on my own strength and get good results, but it also took working extremely hard. And it's not the best deal. I think that the truth is that if you're just relying on yourself, it's going to be limiting, and you're going to be putting a lot of effort into, maybe not get much leverage. Has been my experience. You can let me know if it's true. Then we come to the balanced approach of, there's not everything is in my control, but a lot is in my control. And I think that this is a very useful mindset. As someone who believes in God, again, I believe that everything that I have that is good is given me to God, by God, and any control I have, it's ultimately because it's been allowed into my life. And it's for me, it's a healthy mindset, because I understand that, I have the ability to influence and change things, but ultimately, I am partnered to be able to create things, and it's not just all relying on my own strength. So for me, that is useful. And I'm talking to myself here, because I actively will lean on my own strength. This will only happen if I grind. But in reality, we need other people. You need other people. If you believe in God, then leaning not on your own understanding, you need other forces in your life to help you. And we're not meant to be in these bubbles, going back to the community mindset, okay? Okay, now the final belief that I'm going to propose is common but not true. And by the way, if you're still in the thought train with me here, then kudos to you. But I'm going to propose that it's not true that your words do not matter. Or in other words, the things that we say do not have any effect. And I believe that ultimately our actions and things we do are things that will create progress. If we're just talking and not doing, obviously we won't have results. But I don't think we often, and myself especially, take our words carefully enough. And I want you to imagine, and you can just disagree with me, that's fine, but I want you to imagine that when you speak, imagine something was literally being created every time you spoke. And if you lived your life like that for a week, I'd be curious how much intention would be behind your words and what results would actually be in the reality of your life if that's the way that you spoke. Because for me, it's hard to find someone who has created incredible, beautiful things who doesn't speak that way. And so I think that the words we use do have creative power. I believe the power of life and death is in the tongue. So I think that it's important that, again, I'm speaking to myself, that we catch ourselves, especially in the negativity spirals. Often we're saying things that are, again, it goes to the concept of truth. If you're saying negative things about yourself, I believe that's not true. I don't believe that, just because you failed doesn't mean you're a failure. And these are the type of things that we say that create these things that ultimately are dragging us down, but aren't to the reality that perhaps we're supposed to walk in. So I would encourage you to think carefully about the words you say, carefully about, imagine everything you said literally happened, or literally you were creating something physical with each word that you used. And I think that will, if you run an experiment, let me know next week how that changed your outcome. Maybe nothing happened, maybe something happened. You can let me know. But anyways, that's my last thought on the thought train for you all. Thank you all for enjoying this time with me together here. Appreciate you all very much. Have a very, very beautiful day, and I will see you next time.